But my animations are breaking. Again. Alright. Bummer. Human brain development. Let's move on. So I talked a little bit in the last one. I kind of... It was a good segue. I wouldn't say bury the lead. I think a good segue. That talked about kind of some of the distinctness of human brain development and differences or that make humans so more intelligent. We say, oh, it's complexity of the brain and brain size to body ratio, which we'll get into in a second, etc. So we're going to comment on that a little bit more here. Okay, so one of the big things is, let me get my pointer here. Beautiful. All right. So one of the big interesting things with intelligence is you can kind of map the ratio of brain weight to body weight. So the amount your body's investing in brain, as an organism, in brain composition compared to the rest of your body, right? So whereas in other primates like chimpanzees, neurogenesis, so the continued growth and development or growth and proliferation of neurons kind of stops at the time of birth. So we have birth right here, and when a newborn chimp is born, they've kind of stopped with the neurogenesis, right? So they're not going to get a lot more brain matter or neuron development throughout their life, like a little bit, but not crazy. But after a human is born, you have the same amount of development as you did before birth. So that just continues on. Birth is not like the end point of neural development for humans. It's kind of the midpoint, right? And so your brain continues to grow and develop up until you're an adult. And it depends what I don't have their definition of adult, but we'll comment more on that in this lecture. But as you can see here too, so we have the adult brain weight to about adult body weight ratio, and you can see most of these. So like the higher primates, the more intelligent, right? Orangutans, not orangutan. There's no G at the end for all of you like me when I was a kid and thought it was orangutan. Chimpanzees and gorillas, those generally more intelligent, like bonobos, kind of a chimpanzee, that'd probably be up there. And then down here you probably have spider monkeys and macaques and things like that. Anyways, but humans, you can see the brain weight to body weight way outside of this curve here. So it's about 3.5 times higher than that of the apes. So that's one of the contributing factors, so to speak, to in this increased intelligence. The other thing that's been associated, not necessarily proven, but associated with this increased intelligence is the folding of a brain, right? So you hear that with that elephants and humans have and I believe dolphins have very, very folded brains. So you have a lot of surface area here, right? And so that is something that's been associated. Elephants, very intelligent, very, very emotionally advanced. They like mourn and they understand loss. They never forget. I don't know how true that is, but that's the trope, right? But they are very emotionally intelligent animals and just intelligent in general. Elephants are, and dolphins too. But if we compare that to like a mouse, so you can see here, there is like no folding in this brain, right? And so, not that mice can be relatively intelligent, but not on the scale of like, a human or a chimpanzee or elephant or a dolphin, etc. So these folds, they're not associated with increased neuron number, but so the folds don't mean that there's more neurons quantitatively. It just means there's more surface area, as I said. That's kind of the end of that. So let's move on. So there's this gene here, this ARHGAP11, or as I say, RGAP. It's like a pirate, right? RGAP11 is a novel human gene that induces the formation of gyri in this mouse neocortex. So this is a so you see we have Neanderthal, Denisovan, and human. So these are all human type people, or so human-esque, right? Neanderthals aren't humans, but they're I don't even know what you would qualify them as. They're not primates, right? So like people-ish. I'm not a human evolutionary or evolution person, so I can't tell you what a good term for this group is. Anyways, moving on. So this gene has been associated with the folding of the brain. So transcriptomic analysis of glial cells between human and rodents and identified a gene involved in calcium signaling and cell migration and activation of this neurogenin transcription regulator. And this gene is found only in humans and only in these so outside glial cells. So if you take this gene, this ARHGAP11B, and you express it in a mouse, you start to see these folds forming. So you can see on this side, we got very smooth, but where they started to express this RGAP11B, you can see this induction of folding starting to happen. So this is a transverse section through the mouse brain showing the expression of this gene. It's tagged with GFP here to make it green. So these cells were electroporated, which is a transgenic method where you give a short burst of electricity to cells and it opens the cell membranes real quick and allows your gene or your RNA or plasmid construct, whatever you want to put in there, to quickly go through, and then it closes real quick. So it's like it was a way for them to locally put this RGAP11B with GFP, so glowing RGAP-B, into the mouse cells to see its function. And you see that it starts to induce this folding. So here, this is a immunolabeling using a marker for the neocortex here. So the red is the neocortex, and the green here is the RGAP11B. Blue is DAPI, so those are just the cell nuclei that are being staged there. So the dashed lines here denote this induced folding that's happening, and the arrow is showing the sulci, which we kind of talked about the formation of that earlier. So anyways, long story short, for all this is kind of visual representation of this folding seems to be that is included with or has been linked to increased intelligence in elephants and in humans and dolphins. That seems to be the result of certain proteins in humans, because these ones are specific to humans. So RGAP11B, that is kind of what is causing this. Now, this is, like I said earlier, specific to humans. So elephants may have a orthologous gene, orthologous, I guess is a better way to pronounce that, an orthologous gene that is similar in nature, but is not the exact same as RGAP11B. But something to make this folding in elephants that is not this. Remember, this is specific to humans, this RGAP11B. But there could be something very similar, evolutionarily similar. And mice don't have it, and that's why they don't have these folds. Now, as I said earlier, when we were talking about what an adult, like in the second slide or whatever, and I said I don't know how they defined adult with that figure because they didn't give me that information. But here is a picture of human brain development. And specifically, in this case, it's myelination. And so you can see on your slides, it's kind of hard to see because my thing here, we have low myelination, which is pinkish, purplish, and then it gets to red, which is about medium. Then we have green, and we have blue, which is high myelination. So remember, this is that protective coating that oligodendrocytes will wrap around neurons. And you can see at 5 years old, pretty low. 8 years old, 12 years old, we're starting to get myelinated. 16, but what's interesting, at least to me here, this myelination, it depends on the individual, right? So everybody's different. So everything's a bell curve, right? So you can either be average, you can be fast, you can be slow. But it doesn't really stop till your early 20s, right? So your brain is continuing to develop. A lot of you in my class are probably at just about the end point of brain development, right? So it's still getting to a point, you're still not fully developed at that point, right? And you're still growing, which is awesome because, I'm just falling apart now. Like there's no more growing in a positive way. I'm growing out and not, brain myelination or whatever. So you're still going through, like, you're still on the upward trajectory. But what's interesting to me about this whole thing, it's weird because a lot of, what am I at here? 11 minutes. Okay, so I'm not going to go too long. But like, it's weird to think and take a step back from just like the novelty or the biology. I know most of you are pre-med, pre-health, blah, 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 and you're like really into, like, sometimes you lose the forest for the trees. And so our society is set up in ways with really historical old adages that have kind of come into play. Like, for instance, 16. This is when you can drive. Okay, so you're biological. I don't know why 16 became the age for driving, but biologically, okay, you're pretty developed. In between here, 18, so you can go off to war. You can vote. You can. They just upped. It used to be smoke cigarettes, but now that's 21, or buy tobacco products. That just shows my age. So in between here, you're not really fully an adult, but you can still go to war, which is interesting, and vote for elections. And then 20, we'll say right past your 21. So that's so you're kind of fully adult, just about fully adult when you can drink and smoke, buy banned substances or controlled substances. But a lot of these things, like 18, kind of from what I've heard from people that have spoken on the issue, is 18, they kind of became the age for the war and stuff like that because most men at the time were like physically pretty adultish. Like you still, if you look at an 18-year-old versus like a 30-year-old, you can still see, physical differences. But like, it was like, well, you're old enough to go and die for your country, essentially, and like handle yourself in war a bit. But developmentally, a lot of these people are still not fully developed. Anyways, it's interesting to me how like these laws, how these numbers are kind of arbitrary because they're not picked from brain development, that's for sure. Anyways, so think about that when you're, when you see stuff about when you have a 16-year-old driving, that their brain's not fully developed yet when you get to that age of having a family. I have a few years to worry about that yet. My kids are down here still. So, but anyways, I think it's interesting how this doesn't line up with traditional Western society views. But all right, that's it. We're going to stop there. I've been rambling a little bit. 15 minutes. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned something and you think differently about how your brain's developing, or did develop in my case in the past. There's a lot. This explains a lot of my decisions when I was in high school and college. The fact that I wasn't this far yet. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.